Hey guys, I've had a ton of questions about my FieldView that I'm using. Guys want to know a little bit about that, and I can just give you my opinion on it. By no means am I a dealer for it or anything like that, so I'm probably not really qualified to tell you everything you need to know about it, but I can tell you from a farmer's perspective, as somebody who's used it, how I feel about it. And the first thing is that there's no data on there that I'm using while running the planter that comes from anywhere new other than through my 2630. So the data that the 2630 monitor here is recording is all Bluetooth wirelessly through this puck that I plug into the tractor that I got from FieldView, and it Bluetooths it automatically up into FieldView, and the FieldView records the data. Hopefully you guys can see that okay. I'm getting a lot of glare there, but I don't know how to fix that. And so the data is nothing new, but what it does for me, what I like it for, is that it puts it into a format that's a lot easier to work with, especially on the go like this. So I can scroll through my different pages. I don't know if you guys can see that or not, but I can look at, right now I'm looking at my population. It gives me a Google Earth image, which is a lot nicer than the map that I get on the 2630. So even when you're going at night sometimes, if you end up in the back of a field, you can actually zoom right into where you are, or zoom out, whatever you want to do. You can see exactly where you're at. So it is nice for that. And if you're not a farmer, you've never been in the back of the field at night, after a few hours making several rounds, you maybe wouldn't realize that you can get lost pretty soon. You don't know where you're at. So it's nice for that. I really like it. The Google Earth image is really nice. You can scroll through the different pages here. You can see my different hybrids. So it maps my hybrids a lot nicer. Again, that's information that's on the 2630. But I can take this home at night, and I can look at this at night, and I can study the different maps on it and everything, versus the 2630. I've got to download it all to a USB, take it home, put it on my laptop, or get it onto my John Deere or whatever. This is a lot handier for that. It's also handier for dropping pins. If I come across a rock or a tile that needs attention or something, I can drop a field pin right here, and I've got that so that I can bring it with me in like a rock picker tractor or a pickup, or walking on foot. I can walk right to that pin and go right to that and know where my issue is. So I can record that a lot easier, rather than, you can drop a pin on a 2630 also, but it's going to be a lot trickier to go out and find that spot and figure out where you need to go, because you're not going to probably carry your laptop with you out into the field. So for scouting and stuff, it's really nice. It's got planting and harvest summaries where it breaks down. Here's a planting summary. These are my different hybrids that I've been planting. Those are the average populations and the amount of acres that I've got planted of each of those, and it'll record that for each different field. We'll go to the home page here, go to the overview, and kind of show you some other stuff. And a lot of this is nicer on a laptop. I do like the iPad in the cab. It's a lot more user friendly than the 2630. It's a lot nicer to work with on the go. We'll run through some of this. Yield analysis is really cool. So here's our different fields. This is broke down by fields. These are our fields over here. Our average yield is this line here, and this will tell you in order what our highest yielding fields were. This is last year's 2016. This is the harvested acres of those fields. You can switch it to hybrids. Here's our different hybrids and the highest yielding hybrids we had compared to average, and the amount of acres we had of each of those. Soil types. So it breaks down our different soil types, the average yield on those soil types versus the average overall, and the amount of acres we harvested of those soil types. So that is something that's really cool to look at and get a lot of information from. Rainfall. This is one part that I think they're going to need to make a lot of improvements on. I think there's areas where they have some really good data. I'm not sure if they're working on still trying to get other data stations put into this, but in our area, the rainfall is not very accurate yet. A lot of guys talk about FieldView. One of the reviews I've read on FieldView is that it's nothing more than an expensive rain gauge. Honestly, I don't use it as a rain gauge at all anymore. I hardly look at it anymore, because I don't know that I really trust it. But I am told that that's going to be getting a lot more accurate, and also that the data takes up to 3 days to completely fill. So eventually in time, maybe it gets accurate, but 3 days later, I don't go back and look at the amount of rainfall in here because I needed that data a little sooner than that. But it is possible that for nitrogen, from a nitrogen standpoint, as far as figuring out that, maybe it is accurate, but I guess I don't use it as a rain gauge. Speaking of nitrogen, we can go here to our nitrogen status, and we can go to each field. This is a lot nicer to look at on a laptop, but basically the basic breakdown is you plug in your nitrogen applications here, and I do that on a laptop. So you put in your nitrogen applications here, and it's got your planting date, which is automatically machine generated when it Bluetooths that information from the tractor. So you fill in the amount of nitrogen you put on. It knows your soil types, your hybrid that you're planting, and it's got all that different kind of stuff, all the different dates. So this is telling me that at a 190 bushel yield goal on this field with the nitrogen practices that I've used, from today on, if we have average weather, we will have 35 pounds of extra nitrogen in that field at the end of the year, which is a little bit more than we want. I will say right now that we haven't actually used FieldView as a decision-making nitrogen management tool yet, but if we get a chance and we run into a field, say there's a field that's short on nitrogen, maybe we'll do some test strips where we can go in and apply, side dress some nitrogen into that field, maybe during the season, and see where things match up. So right now I'm not actually using this as a management tool to make any big decisions, but I am watching it and monitoring it, and one of the things I've learned is that we're actually pretty close on our nitrogen management. So just from years of experience and kind of knowing what our fields need, I am learning that if this is accurate, we're actually pretty close on nitrogen. 35 pounds is a ways to be off at this point, but that's also very, very dependent on weather. So anybody that knows anything about nitrogen knows that it's an element that has a really big cycle that's really dependent on weather and all kinds of agronomic factors. So nitrogen is extremely hard to predict, and that's why side dressing nitrogen, variable rate nitrogen, and side dressing and spoon feeding throughout the season and things like that has gotten so popular, where instead of putting on one nitrogen application at the beginning of the year, guys will put on several smaller nitrogen applications. And I think there's probably a lot to that, but nitrogen is so complicated, it's so hard to stay on top of something like that. And right now, with what we know about it, our fields have a really high CEC, so we have a high ability to hold nitrogen on our fields. We've got really black soils up here, heavy soils. We don't have any irrigation, so that helps us as far as where we're at geographically anyway. Our soils are pretty much, we believe they're able to pretty much hold a full season's nitrogen application at one time. So if we go in the spring and put our nitrogen application on, we think that our fields are capable of holding all that nitrogen throughout the season. So that's the reason that we don't do a lot of side dressing anymore. But that is something we're watching. It may be something that could change in the future. Go back to our overview here. Field health images. I really enjoyed these last summer. I'll go here. And you can go back historically on these also. But so here's the images of these fields that were taken on these dates. So April 28th, let's go to the field I'm in now. Right here. If I can open that up, there we go. Obviously this field wasn't planted on April 28th, so there isn't much to look at. But let's go to 2016, last year's soybeans. Okay, there's September 8th of 2016. You can look in that and you can see that's the vegetation photo. You can go back, here's April 28th. Here's August 9th, or August 28th, sorry, and August 9th. You can go back to July 25th. Some photos are better than others. They'll turn out better than others, and I'm told that that's dependent on what the day is like when the satellites roll by. Sometimes they've got to try to shoot a photo through the clouds, or maybe there's only one satellite available. I don't know exactly how that works, but some photos are nicer than others. We also get a scouting map with each one. So here's July 25th last year on our scouting map. Here's September 8th. And I did look up what this index means, or how they come up with this. You know, you look at the red spots here and you kind of think, okay, that's not a very good spot in the field. If that were soybeans, those are maybe 10, 20 bushel soybeans. But the thing is that it takes an overall average of the field, and just because this is red doesn't mean that it's poor soybeans, and just because this is green doesn't mean that it's 80 bushel soybeans. So it takes an average of the field, and the red is just your lowest, like I think it was 20%, the green is your highest 20%. So it doesn't mean it's necessarily good or bad. They could only be 10 bushels apart from each other, and it would still be your lows and your highs. But it's a handy map to look at. If you're walking around in your fields during the summer, you can carry the iPad with you. You can walk right to those spots and see, you know, maybe what you're looking at, if there's something to look at. But that's a handy thing. I do like that. And actually, I won't go all the way back to it now, but we had a field in 2013, before we had FieldView. We had a field, it's over 400 acres. It's a really large field. And you can't get to the middle of it by walking. Once that corn is tall, you're not going to walk 3/4 of a mile back there to look at the corn. So we had a hailstorm roll over that field. We knew it. We went out and looked at it. We looked at the north end, the east end, and the south end. There was hail damage. It wasn't a lot. We figured, you know, it's not a big deal. We didn't really look into it too deeply because it didn't look like anything we were going to collect on as far as hail insurance. When we got to that field and we combined it, the center of that field was completely wiped out. You could see where the hailstorm had gone right through the middle of that field and just wiped everything out right through the middle of it. Well, we didn't know this until 2 months later, 3 months later, when we were combining. You could see it on the yield map. There was a 100 bushel difference in the middle of that field versus the outsides. When I went back and looked on FieldView when I first got it, I thought, let's go look back on the image history of that field. It was as clear as day. When we got the image history from that a week after that storm, and again, this is long after that year had come and gone. This was in 2013, so it was far too late to look at, to use it for anything. But looking at the imagery on that field from July of 2013, it was as clear as day right where that storm had passed right through the middle of that field. If we had had that technology at the time, we could have looked at that and known that that storm rolled right through the center of that field, and we could have, you know, we would have done something to walk back there, or for sure taken a drone over it and looked at it, but we would have done something to get back there and assess the damage on that. So that is one spot, something like that, where FieldView could be really, really valuable as far as a return on investment. Other things I see this year, they did finally make it really easy to, we'll switch back to cab here, they made it really easy and better to write variable rate seeding maps. Last year they just went by soil types, which never worked out in our case. It just wasn't accurate. Now they've made it easy to upload our harvest data onto it and come up with a variable rate map. So I can open that up. You can see here, this maps out. This is the field I'm planting right now. This is a variable rate map that I wrote in about 10 minutes yesterday morning before we got into this field. So I'm excited about that, to be able to do that and write it on my own, and they make it really easy to edit. It comes up with an automatic map for you, and from there on you can edit that as much or as little as you want to. So they've made it really easy, really good to do that with. The other thing I hear they're going to make it easy for, and I have not done it, I haven't checked into it yet, maybe you can already do it, but if you can't, I'm told that we will be able to soon, is to load our soil samples onto there. So we can load our grid samples where we grid every 2.5 acres and get a variable rate map on our nutrients. We'll be able to load that onto here, and I'll be able to mess with writing some of my own fertilizer recs, or our fertilizer prescriptions, this fall. So hopefully I can use this to write my own fertilizer recs and do our own variable rate fertilizing. If you've watched my last videos from last year, you've seen me running the deep bander and talking about how that variable rate works. So I'm hoping that's something I can do this fall with this. So that's just another spot where hopefully this will pay off big as far as a return on investment. So right now, those are kind of my thoughts on this. Hopefully you guys got something out of this, and you know, thanks for watching. I guess if you've got other questions on this, go ahead and ask in the comments, and I will comment on it and give you an answer on how I feel about that. So thanks for watching. It's going to be a good day. We're going to get a bunch more planted. Hopefully things are going good where you guys are at.